I'm Kathleen Frank. This is a typical day of painting for me is, well, a typical day starts with an hour or two of hiking with my dogs. And we live near a wonderful city park that used to be a ranch. And there are trails all over, the wonderful, beautiful trails with views of the mountains. So a lot of times I'm taking out my phone and taking pictures, but and then the rest of the morning can be gardening or playing with the dogs, or if I'm trying to get a piece of work done, then I spend a lot of time painting during the day. And otherwise, it's for sure any day of the week, I absolutely paint from 7 to 9 at night. So that's a guaranteed time. So the day is, between grocery shopping, cooking, and laundry, and all the usual things that people do, I'm painting. It's an absolute time when the door is closed, everything is off, and I've guaranteed that time. I mean, I know writers who say, if you don't spend half an hour, all the creatives, at least you have to spend half an hour a day. But I'm 80, so I'm doing, as much work as I can, as fast as I can, because it's not like I have 40 years of career left. So I'm working as fast as I can. I was exposed to painters by my parents, mostly my mother, who absolutely loved art. She was a elementary school teacher and did a lot of artwork herself. But we had neighbors who were watercolorists, and they took me out painting down in the estuary with the boats and the water in Santa Fe, California. And I was really impressed by that. And there was a friend named Surendorf. I can't remember his first name. He lived in Columbia in California. It was an old ghost town, but now it's actually a state park. But he was a printmaker, and every time we went up into the mountains, we would visit him, and they'd always buy a print from him, and I'd see his press, and I just loved the idea of his studio. And where I was born in Corona del Mar, and during the end of World War II, they lived next door to more watercolorists. They used to. They were trying to remember. Their Brandt was their last name. He was quite a famous painter, and his wife was too. And they taught. Always had classes going in their home, and I loved their home and the studio and the whole idea of living with your work. But I wasn't sure I knew I wanted to be a teacher. And I wanted to be an art teacher because that's the one thing I was really fairly good at. But I didn't know I wanted to be a painter, and I didn't know I wanted to be an artist until much later in life. I began taking, I did the wood carving and loved doing that. And when we moved to Pennsylvania, I needed to, but we moved to Pennsylvania, the kids were old enough that I thought it was time to start teaching again. So they told me the state board of education said, you need a couple more courses, which I thought was strange because I had a lifetime K-12 credential from California, but that wasn't good enough for Pennsylvania. So they said, take a graphics course and something else. So I took a life drawing class, and I started taking printmaking. and fell in love with printmaking and ended up getting a master's in that. And I began doing printing on fabric and making costumes and doing performance art with them. And I had the first PhD in performance art from Stanford was my teacher at Penn State. Anyway, when we moved to New Mexico, I brought those photographs with me and showed our realtor, who had been a retired. I'm not sure what he was. He was either dean of a big art college or president of an art college. And he looked at my work, my portfolio of costumes and the hand-printed fabrics and everything. And he said, "Do you sell anything?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Would you like to sell things?" I thought, well, it'd be kind of fun to do something. And he said, "Could you sell these?" And I said, "But then I'd have nothing to perform in." And he said, "Well, maybe you have to think about that." So I began painting, which of course I'd been doing in grad school anyway, and undergraduate. But the painting just kept growing and growing. And when we moved to New Mexico, that's when it really took off. So I was sort of a late bloomer. The choices that I make when I'm photographing, and I do everything from my photographs. It's all my photographs, except during COVID, I had a neighbor who was still backpacking and things, and he was taking pictures for me when I wasn't getting out. But the choices that I make are always things like, this book that is coming out of my paintings is called I See a Painting. And that's what I always, if I see something, I'll stop and I've got to take a picture of it. And I compose with the camera. I move on with after composing with the camera, then there's a lot of cropping and thinking about what in that picture is most important. But it's always something unusual about it, or just plain beautiful. The lighting, it could be the lighting, it could be the patterns of the mountains, or all kinds of things. It's got to be something that grabs me enough to want to spend all that time working on it. In any of the arts, any of the creatives, you just have to keep doing it. You just get started, and if you don't like what you see, just keep doing it. It'll change. It's going to evolve. You're going to learn, and you can't help it. If you just simply keep working at it, you're going to get better, and you're going to like what you're doing after a while if you don't like it at first.